Welcome to Navigating Change in an Ever-Changing Environment. I am Sarah Suter, and I'm going to spend some time with you today walking you through how to navigate the change that's happening in your organization. And this could be as simple as navigating the change of leadership all the way down to relocating your organization. So whether you are a leader, a human resources executive, or a facility manager in your organization that's trying to figure out, how do I right size my organization? This one is for you to help build that baseline of how we're going to navigate through this period. To get us started, we have to talk about leadership styles. And we've determined that there are 4 that we like to outline when we're working with clients in our field. First is the power model, which everybody knows. It's a you serve me model, the typical pyramid with the leader at the top, and everything funnels down and everybody works for that leader. No one enjoys working with this type of model, but they exist out there still today. The second would be management. You have a title, but you haven't invested time to gain respect of those that work with you. And there's not a lot of balance in there because you just can't lead people without having the skills to build relationships. The third model is the transformational leadership, where you initiate change and you help to empower people along the way. This is really moving us into where we like to lead, which is the servant leadership model, where we inspire and equip all of those that we influence. And it's really flipping that pyramid over where the leaders are at the bottom of the pyramid and you pour into people around you, building up and out to eventually serve your clients. There's an old way of thinking and a new way of thinking, and everybody knows this, but it's good to set the framework for, as leaders, how is leadership changing and am I evolving with it? So the old way of thinking was employees are the biggest risk, and now the new way is employees are the biggest asset, and that's how we see our employees. The old way has top-down communication, your skills over your behavior, just show up, get your job done. I don't really care about whether you engage or interact with people well. And the new way is really moving into open communication, behaviors over skills, empowering results, and number 1, flexible working schedules. And in the season we're in right now, this is so critical to the generation coming up. And so old way versus new way of thinking. And so we want to move you today into a new way of thinking in your organization. So real quick on what is servant leadership, because this is a model that we teach and we follow and have done so for the last 7 years, which has helped transform our organization and many of the organizations that we work with. Servant leadership is really flipping that organizational chart. And you can see in this model where if you have the power leader, it's a command and control model where everything is about the leader. Your employees are your tools and your customers are your challenges. And in the servant leadership model, as leaders, we are inspiring and equipping the people that work with us. They are our resources and our customers are our allies. So if your intent is to navigate the change in your industry and your organization, you must start to look at your employees and your customers differently. So then there's 9 behaviors in servant leadership, and we won't do a deep dive into those today, but we'll touch quickly because they really guide us into the conversation we're going to have next on how we navigate change. We believe in a serve first model in which we are serving our team to go serve our clients. And as leaders, when you shift your mindset to serve your team rather than your team serves you, you will find that you can grow and evolve so much quicker because they have an investment. You're building trust together. You have values that you're kind of living in alignment with in your organization, and you're listening to understand what's the situation, what's the problem, and how can I serve you? Another critical one is to think about your thinking. As a leader, are you always thinking negatively about your staff? What are you thinking about your clients? Where are you going with your conversations? And so what you think and how you respond to those thoughts really matters in the growth and evolution of your company and how you navigate change. And a few other behaviors that you can deep dive into later at the Servant Leadership Institute is how you add value to others, how you demonstrate courage in your leadership, how you increase your influence, and how you live your transformation. So this is a great resource and a great tool that we use to set the framework for how we navigate change in organizations. One of the most critical things when you're talking about how to navigate change in any organization is to build trust. And are you trustworthy? And are you willing to extend trust to others? Because trust creates confidence. And in order to create confidence, you have to start to release trust to those. We like to say that trust is given right from the start. And that way, when you're building a relationship with someone, you already set it on the foundation that I trust you. Something has to happen to create distrust and suspicion. But if you start with trust, then you're in a whole different starting game with your clients, with your staff, and you're able to tackle these changes easier. Remember, leaders, people do not leave companies, they leave leaders. It might be you that needs to start to change the way that you interact with your team and with your clients. If you're an untrustworthy leader, they will leave and your credibility will be up for question. And a lack of trust is a primary factor for why people leave. So we like the Stephen Covey model on the speed of trust. It's really simple. It's a great resource for you. And it really reflects in this diagram that when trust goes down, speed goes down and cost goes up. And think about that in your organization. When there's no trust, people are ineffective and the cost of doing work can triple because your team is moving slower. They're inside of this trust gap and they're having challenges and they're not efficiently doing the work. But when trust goes up, speed goes up and costs go down because your team is working more efficiently together. Simple model, but it gets us to the point of where we want to go on navigating change. So to navigate change, you have to build trust. Stephen Covey has a fun one. You can't talk yourself out of a problem you behaved yourself into. And as leaders, we can easily behave ourselves into a situation and we're trying to get out of it. And sometimes you just have to acknowledge your own behavior that got you there and start to shift. Think about your thinking. Think about how you need to evolve as a leader so that way your behaviors aren't causing the issues in your organization. So let's move quickly on how we build trust as leaders, because in order to navigate change well together, you have to build trust. If you're relocating your company, you have to be someone that the employees feel that they can trust, that they're honest with, they can share their concerns, you can hear it, and you can start to build a relationship. If I hear what you're saying, I understand what your concerns are, and this trust factor that we have together says to you, I am in this to make sure that you have the least amount of disruption as possible, and I understand what your concerns are, and I understand what you're feeling. So behaviors that build trust include talking straight, being direct, demonstrating respect, creating transparency. If you've wronged someone, you need to right it. You need to show loyalty and deliver results. And you can keep going from here, but these are just some of the behaviors that help you as leaders to build trust. One of the number one things you can do is to extend trust. You want to extend trust to those who you're working with, so that way it starts to build that reciprocal relationship of I trust you, and hopefully through this partnership you will trust me to have the best intentions for you to be successful in your role. So we created a model called the stoplight effect because we found that as we were training leaders on how to navigate the change in their organization, specifically to right sizing their organization, which is when you're getting ready to either decrease the amount of space that you're working in. And in these times, you may have realized that many people are working from home and you don't need as much space. Or if you're finding that your company is growing and you need more space, it's called right sizing. It's getting the amount of space that fits the needs of your company now and into the future. So when we were working with leaders to relocate their organizations and teach the executives of the organization how to navigate change, we decided to come up with the stoplight effect. And the stoplight effect essentially is a tool to help you navigate the change in your organization and understand the difference between change management versus transition management. So change is something that happens to us, like moving into a new building or changing leadership. Transition focuses on the human factor and what's going through people's minds as they go through change. Navigating this process helps us to realize that it's not just situational. It's not just people in boxes, right? It is people's lives that are being impacted by whatever change is happening in your organization. And we have to understand that there's emotions and there's feelings around that. And I understand as leaders, we don't always want to get into the feelings, but successfully understanding transition management will help your company have the least amount of disruption moving forward. And it builds trust. So when you think about a stoplight, you have the red, yellow, and green. And your people, in essence, are running in that same mindset. When we talk about change, and especially in today's season where there's so much change happening with COVID and the environment that we're all living in with daily changes, people are on red. They are like, stop, I am not ready. I cannot handle any more change that is out of my control. And so this leads us to where these are individuals struggling with the change happening in the organization, and they're often on red as they're dealing with a loss or an ending. So if you think about it in today's environment, our employees got ripped out of the business environment, sent home, and they're navigating this change now of how am I working from home? What does that infrastructure look like? And I'm starting to feel like I'm out of control, that I don't have anything that I can really navigate independently because it's happening to me. It's not my choice. So the loss or the ending is something you have to pay attention to. And this could be a loss of identity as you move from one location to another if you're moving your organization and right sizing. And it could be the change from closed offices to open offices, which many organizations moved to over the last few years with bench seating. And now we're trying to figure out as leaders, what do I do with all this open office space in this new COVID world? Or it can be an emotional shift when you're coping with leadership changes. And this is one of the biggest things happening right now. As people are feeling isolated, they're at home, organizations are still evolving, and maybe you're changing your leadership or you're having layoffs. And so there's this emotional state that people are going through, and you have to understand that you have to talk them through this time and be available and be present to help get them away from this frozen state of I'm not ready, I can't handle any more change at this point, and I am on red until I get to a place where my anxiety decreases and I can start to move towards a yellow situation. So we like to say people on yellow are wait, I have questions. They are embracing the change, but they want more specific details and timelines before they will fully commit. And so maybe it is, where are we moving to? What's my space going to look like? How is leadership going to work with me through this process? So that way I know what the impact is for me. In this state, employees can also feel confused. They're uncertain and they're impatient if they feel left in the dark on the events happening. And as we have a workforce that's working from home and some are working from the office, and you might be thinking now's the time to navigate this change, you have to realize that communication is harder. So they could feel blindsided by what do you mean we're moving our office? How do I manage that? And so leaders, we have a really important role when our team is in yellow. And a lot of people in yellow can either make the decision to stay with your company or move from your company. And you've invested a lot of time and a lot of money in them because they are an asset to your organization. And when they move on because we didn't transition them well to whatever's going on in your organization, that's a high cost loss for you. So we talked about the foundation of trust and kind of that servant leadership model before, and this is where it comes into play. Trust is critical in this stage as our team needs to trust we are focusing on their needs and providing accurate information when it's available. And that will help to reduce the anxiety that so many people are feeling in this season as we're navigating the changes in our world and navigating the changes in our workspaces. And everything's coming at the same time. People on yellow can move to green or red throughout this process. So don't worry, we can, through clear communication, move them through and give you the tools and techniques to get them. But you also have to be a leader that is aware. And when you're building trust with people, that also means you're listening to understand. You're paying attention to the way that they're talking, the body language, everything about them to see, did I lose you along this way? Seems like you're moving more into this red zone where you were like, stop, I cannot do this. This is not going to work for me. And I want to understand what it is that you're concerned about so that way I can answer your questions and eventually get you to a place of comfort to navigate this change. When you have a green, these are your go-to people. They are like, let's do this. I love change. And these are your champions. They're excited about the change happening in the organization, and they're looking forward to new beginnings. And when you find people that love change, you let them lead their peers because they are the biggest advocate for you. So you identify them early in the process, and they can lead teams through the transition as peer-to-peer advisors and resources. And so find those that are on board. A lot of times as leaders, we know years in advance when we're going to start the process of changing our organization. And it's not something that's decided overnight. Although in this season, organizations are having to change pretty rapidly. But you know, as a leader, if your lease is coming up in a year, that you're going to start the process of looking at it. Am I going to renew my lease? Am I going to move to a new location? What size do I need? And these conversations are happening with a core team of people. And they have 6 to 12 months to start to process already before the news even comes out to staff that you're moving. A lot of times these are your people that are already on green because they've moved through the red and yellow, the stop, the wait, and they're ready to go because they've been talking about it for a year. So you have to realize as a leader, you've been planning for a long time, but now you got to bring everyone else along with you on this journey. And it's so critical to communicate along the way. So change is just ahead. So let's give you some successful tips to navigate the change. So lead with the why before the what. We always want to lead with the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? What problem are we solving? How is this going to help our environment and change the situation for the better for the company? And people are more likely to resist what they don't understand. So if we lead with the why, we're helping them to know that we are solving a problem and that this is a part of our solution. You also want to communicate in real time to give employees updated information, dispel any rumors, and answer questions to reduce anxiety. Anyone who's leading an organization or a department knows that as soon as one person starts to talk and tell their version of the story, then the rumor tree goes. So as a leader, the more information you share early on in the process, it will dispel those rumors and let them know that you are the person that's going to tell them directly what's going on, because that's the culture you're creating when it comes to navigating this change versus I'm going to tell you when you're 2 to 4 weeks out that I'm changing everything about your work environment. And what happens when you do it that way? You get a lot of people on red. They start to question your leadership. They start to question their place in the company, and they start to look elsewhere. So communicate early, communicate in real time, and be honest about what's going on. Understand that transition takes time and that each individual moves through the phases at their own pace. Not everyone goes from red to green as fast as you might. Some people have the ability to cope with change better than others, and you just don't know what's going on with people personally to know, is this response about that we're moving our company, or is this response about this changes everything about what they know? Their commute is different. Their daycare is different. Where they like to go for their walks, where they like to have their lunch. Everything about what they can control is changing. And so it's going to take people different amounts of time to transition. And as a leader, as you're investing in the change, you need to invest just as much time, if not more, into the people and the process to make sure that they are in alignment with you and ready to follow you on this journey. So we always believe, be a constant learner. And I love this quote from Art Barter: how you get the results is more important than the results themselves. So part of your journey needs to be you as a leader investing the time and moving through the process and being open and honest. A couple of our other favorite ones are Craig Rochelle: developing people doesn't happen accidentally, it has to be intentional. Change and transition management is intentional. If you ignore it, you will have so much difficulty in moving through whatever it is that your organization is dealing with, whether it's a relocation, change of leadership, or any other aspect of change that's happening in your organization. You have to intentionally invest in people to have the outcome that you're looking for. And as a leader, you have the ability to lift up or tear down. So be mindful about your words in this season, because what is important to you is sometimes very different than what's important to your team. And if they are your biggest asset, then you will realize that's a huge loss when they go. And finally, if serving is below you, then leading is beyond you. If you're not able to serve your team in a period of change, then maybe you're not in the right spot. So growing as a leader means realizing that I have to serve those who work with me and for me in order for us to all align and get to where we want to go. So thank you for taking the time to learn how to navigate change in your organization. For some additional tools, you can check us out at cbsisandiego.com. We also have a podcast on Lead with Coffee and blogs and checklists that will help you along your journey in navigating change in your organization.